So your dharma is what your purpose is, like your deep inner knowing, that purpose that you're put here on earth for. Helping people is definitely my dharma because I connect so well with people on a personal level. I really want to get to know them heart to heart and soul to soul, which is what I'm doing now.
Thank you for joining us on the Evolve Your Brand podcast. I'm your host, Olia Merkes, and just want to give a huge shout out to Icon Industries, Shane ×3 because you love yourself that much, Steven, and we named the EO Steven, by the way. So now there's two Stevens, and the rest of the crew at Icon. We can't do this without you. Thank you so much. Without further ado, a very special guest, Danielle Wakefield. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you. So you are an attorney, but before we jump into that, what does your journey to San Diego look like? Where did you grow up, and what's the fondest memory that you have growing up?
Like many of your other guests, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of how I got here. But before the age of 5, I lived in 3 countries, and actually 4 countries, including the United States. And we moved to California, Orange County, when I was 7. So, and I have a younger brother. And my mom still lives in the same house that we grew up in Laguna. So we, my fondest memory from being a child is definitely going back to Germany, which is where my brother was born, where my mom's from. Every summer, my mom would send us back there for 6 weeks because I'm old and daycare did not really exist back then. And after school programs were really non-existent full time. We did do summer school sometimes and we did camp, but my mom found the best way she had to work. She was a full-time single mom. The best way to do daycare was to send us back to our family. So we had a lot of fun with them back there. We got to spend time with our grandparents before they passed, with our aunts and uncles and cousins who we're still close to now because of those experiences. And so that's probably my fondest childhood memory. But, you know, we also we grew up by the beach. So we went to the beach when my mom had time, and we were both on the swim team when we were younger and stuff like that. So how I ended up getting to San Diego was kind of the long route. I went to college in Sacramento and I went to law school in Denver. And this was all a little bit older. I mean, I finished law school when I was in my early 30s. And I came back to California. I took the bar here and passed and came back here to live and was practicing in Orange County from about 2001 when I passed the bar to about 2010, which is when I met my partner. And we lived together in Orange County at the time. And then in 2014, she got a job transfer down to San Diego. So I decided I work from home. I can work remotely anywhere as a lawyer. And
you were way ahead of the game.
It's even easier now because I used to have to get in my car and drive. And now I could just drive on my computer and get to any courthouse I want to. So we came down and we rented a little condo in Carlsbad, and it was great. We loved it. We instantly knew San Diego was more our vibe than Orange County. I was kind of getting tired of Orange County traffic and Orange County people. So we have been here ever since. In 2016, we bought our home where we live in North County, and we've been in that home ever since. So, and I'm still running my business. I, rent some office space to meet people and meet clients. But other than that, I'm pretty much work from home, with my 3 animal companions laying under my desk all day long. Those are my assistants, and that's how I ended up here.
Your assistants?
Yeah, my
That's
assistants.
adorable.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Germany. So how many years were you going? How many years that you and your brother?
Probably 6 years while we were younger. Yeah. So I think I was 8 and we went until I was about 12 or 13. And then the novelty kind of started wearing off. I wanted to spend summers back here with my friends. And
Gotcha.
We started to, we were latchkey kids. Don't tell anybody, but we started to spend time at home while my mom went to work, and we just hung out with our friends, and our friends' parents were home and stuff like that. And, we drank from fire hoses and didn't wear helmets when we rode our bikes, but we had a great time.
It was different.
It's totally different.
Now you look back, you're like, man, we lived dangerously.
Yeah, no cell phones, none of that. I mean, our parents never knew where we were, and it was great.
Yeah.
So I'm true Gen X.
Now all I have to do to check where the boys are is just pull it up on my phone.
Right.
It's amazing. It's the electronic dog leash. I'm like, thank goodness our parents didn't have this. What was the one thing, one of the things I've been talking to the boys about is I want them to gain perspective on how other people live in different countries, different, cultures. How do you think that shaped your mindset as you grew up by being able to go and spend 6 weeks?
Something that I didn't realize until I got older was how independent we were. I mean, we flew all the way to Europe by ourselves at that age. Obviously, people on the flights took care of us, and it's a little bit different now. This was all before 9/11. And when we got there, we were just treated very independently. So we were able to walk around and do whatever we wanted. Nobody was ever concerned that anything was going to happen to us. Especially when we were there, we were in a really safe community. And we just walked and did everything. So we didn't even have our bikes with us or anything. So we just walked and did things with our family members. And if everybody wanted to go to the sea for that day, we went to the sea for that day. So it was a lot of fun, but it also taught us a lot of responsibility. We had to make our bed, do our chores, help grandmother with cooking, like those types of things. I don't have kids myself, so I don't know how that is today, but it was a pretty strict upbringing. And I think it helped instill some values in me. I still make my bed every day to this day.
Nice.
Yeah. And that comes from being a kid and having to make my bed every day. So, was that kind of the answer to your question?
Oh, that was awesome. I was just curious. I'm like, hey, you don't get a lot of people that say I spent 6 summers for 6 weeks in Germany. And that's a really, that's a cool thing for your mom to have done.
It was fun.
Yeah. Was there one special thing you loved to do in Germany? Was it food-wise? What was the food scene look like? I'm just curious.
The food was great. I mean, it's a lot of fresh pastries, fresh bread, cheeses, things like that. I'm vegan now, but back in the day, there was a salami and a cheese sandwich on my plate every day. But usually they eat their big meal in the middle of the day. So like a big warm lunch to kind of sit in your belly. And then they do lighter breakfast, lighter dinner. So food was great. But one of our favorite things to do is we would go with our auntie and uncle, which were just good friends of my mom's. And we would go to the Swiss Alps, and we'd get a little cabin in the Swiss Alps, and we would just stay there, and it was amazing. Yeah, we'd literally go hiking through the Alps. It was a Sound of Music, like beauty. So that's a memory that I'll always treasure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
pretty great.
Could you imagine right now the pictures you would get? There would be outrageous.
I'm actually having some homesickness about it right now.
Are you? Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah. That law school. What was the most challenging thing about, you said, you finished up in your early 30s?
Yes. So I went to law.
What was the most challenging thing about law school for you?
I mean, it was challenging to go back as an older student. I mean, most people that go to law school, if they follow the regular curriculum of life, matriculation of life, is they go after undergrad, and they're usually out by 21, 22. And I did have a lot of very young classmates. I mean, by the time they turned the age that I turned when I started, they were already 5 years down the road in their careers. So that was difficult because I took long gaps between high school and college and law school. So it's amazing how quickly you forget the things that you've learned when you take long gaps and start to work. However, that being said, I did feel like I had some life experience under my belt, and I felt like I was ready to go because I made the choice to go when I wanted to go. So I knew by the time I wanted to go to law school that was really the career I wanted to pursue at 29. I had done some other things already that didn't work out. But they had served their purpose. They had pushed me along the path. And, you know, I believe that everything happens the way that it's supposed to for one reason or another. Even if you don't know what that reason is, you can look back and say, yeah, that was meant to happen that way.
So let's dig into that. I got 3 teenagers right now, and that life lesson that you just talked about, I'm like, how do you, what tips would you give to someone? You're like, you were ready, you were focused. You're like, this is what I'm going to do. So if I was going to pick, I think that's one of the most challenging things. Like, what am I going to do that I love? Because I think you're better when you do something that you love.
Yeah.
And how do I make money at it?
That's an interesting question because I feel like I've tackled that just recently. Like probably since I turned 50, I probably have been tackling what is it that I want to do that I love. And it's not that you can't fall into something that you love, because I definitely believe that you can. But do you know what Dharma is? Dharma, yeah. So your Dharma is what your purpose is, like your deep inner knowing, that purpose that you're put here on earth for. And I don't know that I've always known that the law was my Dharma, especially the type of law that I was practicing for 20 years. But I think what I'm doing now, which is much more in the arena of helping people, is definitely my Dharma, because I connect so well with people on a personal level. I really want to get to know them heart to heart and soul to soul, which is what I'm doing now. I think that the way that I got there was by just kind of being quiet and being still with myself and figuring out, can you see yourself doing this for the next 20 years? And honestly, for teenagers, I don't know that they're going to have that perspective. But at my age and at your age, we can certainly look back and go, okay, we've done this, we've done that. Can we do this for 20 more years? And for me, the answer was absolutely not. I'm going to die at my desk and it is not going to be pretty. So I knew I had to make a change. So, I mean, my advice to somebody would be just be still and be quiet with yourself. And it doesn't happen over one day. It doesn't happen over 2 days. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 2 months. It could be 2 years. But I think everybody's different, and we all have to figure out what it is that brings us peace and purpose and passion, all the P's, along with full pocketbooks, so money. And if you really pay attention, I think that everybody can find it. I mean, there are people out there that go to spend all these money on Tony Robbins seminars and all of these other things, and that may work for them. Maybe that's how they find their passion. But for me, it was going in internally, not externally.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
And it doesn't surprise me because as we've gotten to know each other, I think there's a spiritualism that you embody. And, Jay Shetty, which is what you were talking about, Think Like a Monk. I mean, it's an incredible book as far as what you can do to discover who you really are when you go. And ironically, I've been practicing this with the boys because one of my biggest concerns is they don't have time to focus. And I think focus today is more important than ever before. And I mean nothing, no electronics, just quiet 10 to 15 minutes. So we're exercising that, where we all put our phones away, turn everything off, and for 10 to 15 minutes, we just communicate. Because it's like, it's rough. At first it was rough to take that away because there's that addiction. It's just ironic that you bring that up as far as like you just went in to figure out what do I really, really want?
Yeah.
And what answer did you come up with?
So now, how's
that a segue?
Yeah, I actually came up with 2 answers, and so I have kind of 2 career paths going at the same time. One is that I really, really love animals and want to work with animals.
Okay.
So doing anything that I can to protect animals on this planet and protect the species and care for them, and make sure that they're not suffering. It was probably my biggest passion. Like that's the passion where it just makes my heart sing, right? Yeah, so I actually became an animal chaplain, and I didn't expect to talk about that on the podcast, but I am an actual animal chaplain. I went through a whole year-long course to become a chaplain. I'm ordained, and I just work strictly with animals and their owners. But the other thing, because I wanted to continue I offer that as a free service right now. But what I in order to keep making a living and, stay in my marriage and all of that stuff, I wanted to figure out a different practice area. So what I do now is I help people with estate planning. So I do wills, trusts, advanced healthcare directives, powers of attorney, guardianship paperwork for kids. And I do everything in that sort of vein for families, individuals, single parents, older people, any type of race, religion, creed, sexual orientation. I just feel like the world is my oyster there. There's a whole group of people that need my help in that area. And during COVID, that was when I sat and was still and figured out that that's what I wanted to do. Because what I was doing, helping people fight their HOAs, was not really that fulfilling. So, and also
you didn't want to deal with the insurance company?
It didn't really better the world in any way. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It's a different podcast.
It is a different podcast.
Yeah. We won't go there right now. Where does your passion come from when it comes to like giving? You spend a lot of time saying that connections matter, relationships matter, and you want to make a difference. So where does that passion for wanting to help come from for you?
I mean, if I had to go back to Dharma, I'd probably say it's just my Dharma, wanting to help people. So a couple of traits about me is, first of all, I'm really outgoing. I'm very extroverted. So it's just natural for me to be out in the world and want to help or offer advice, which my mom will tell you is sometimes unsolicited and not welcome. But it comes from a helpful place and a helpful nature. But also I'm really empathetic and I'm really passionate. So if I see somebody struggling or hurting or needing something, even if it's, offering a homeless person on the side of the road a bottle of water that I might have in my car, that makes me feel better. And it feels like I'm lifting up the world, right? And we all have to lift the world up together. We can't be pushing it down. We have to be bringing it up together. So that's where my passion for that comes from.
What's changed with our communities, in your opinion? Do we embody that? What do you see?
I think we do embody that in our communities, and I like to surround myself with people that are helping other people, like yourself. A lot of the animal rescues that I, am in touch with online. I see people helping people and people helping other sentient beings. So I tend to focus on that. I try not to focus on the negative stuff that goes on in the news or on social media. It really just brings me down, and it makes me feel like in my own little ecosystem that doesn't exist, right? That I'm not unmindful, or is unmindful the right word? I'm not unmindful about what's going on in the world, but in our tight little community, I do see people lifting each other up. And when I go to community events, like the Pride events or networking events here for I belong to the Vista Chamber of Commerce. So if I go to their networking events, there are people lifting up people in their small businesses every single time. And it is so great to see. So I do think so.
And I love that. I think that's one of the things that I've truly become passionate with is there's incredible people doing incredible things in our communities, and let's share their stories.
Yes.
And, continue to give back to them. You were so passionate about it. We were talking about offline how you do want, during COVID, you were ordering food from small businesses. And I think it's these small businesses that really, really are the foundation of how our community is built. And you have these stories to tell, what are your thoughts about that? About, how we support our, local communities and local businesses?
I'm absolutely all for that. I mean, I will always use a local plumber or eat at a local restaurant or get takeout at a local restaurant or use somebody that has a local business. So whether it be a chiropractor or a gym over a big organization. Not that I don't love Costco. I love my Costco.
We love Costco. I just want
my Costco.
If you are not a Costco fan, I apologize. Your invitation to the podcast has been rescinded. Go Costco. Okay.
But right next to Costco is my favorite little pho Vietnamese restaurant that I frequent whenever I go over there. So,
Okay.
but in all seriousness,
Yeah.
we try to use local businesses around our neighborhood because we see the value in those businesses propping up other businesses, and then other little businesses prop up next to them. And all of those people are feeding their families. And all of those people, I mean, you had a guest on that had a business a family restaurant that he had been running for years and years and years. And see, I love that. I think for it to be handed down from generation to generation, as long as the generations following want to follow in those footsteps, I think that's an amazing legacy. It's all about legacy. Yeah.
Yeah. Legacy comes up a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I going to leave behind? And it's what's come up even more is parents saying that they want to make sure that their kids aren't entitled. So these are the steps that they're taking to make sure that they work hard for what they achieve. So it's very interesting to hear how parents are progressing as well in regards to not just handing over wealth and what they achieved just arbitrarily to their kids.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I give kudos and huge appreciation to parents who are raising their kids that way, because that's how we raise, young people to be good, strong, older people.
Yeah. In your opinion, what's the one thing that we could that each individual can do to help make their community better?
I think go out and volunteer, do something in your community that gets you out there volunteering amongst other people who may know more than you, who may have experience in doing this. Do a beach cleanup, go for a walk for dogs or a walk for Alzheimer's. Get out there amongst your other community members. I think the saddest thing that we can do is go to work and come home and sit in front of our TVs every day and not experience who's out and about in our community. We have such a tight-knit neighborhood where I live. We all go out and do things together, or we spend time together at each other's homes. And through those people, I've learned the kinds of things that they do out in the community. I have a neighbor who volunteers every single election cycle. He's a district manager. He's a retired man, and he volunteers at the polls, and he runs the polls in different areas where we live. And that's all volunteer work. And quite honestly, not very gratifying. I don't know that I would do it. He got yelled at a lot this last election that was last week. So
does he love it though?
He loves it, and he has the perfect personality for it. So that's the other thing. I mean, match what you are volunteering to do with what you love. So I would always volunteer with animals, right? Because that's what I love. But when I was in my younger career, I helped veterans, homeless veterans, a lot. I helped women. I did volunteer work for women who were trying to leave abusive relationships. So these were things that I was tied to when I was younger. It's not that I don't love those causes now. It's just that they wear on my soul. They just hurt my soul. But I think that everybody out there can find something. And that volunteer position could turn into something that makes money for you or just feeds your soul. Even if it's not a moneymaker, it could just make you feel good.
Yeah, I also think, I've been thinking about like what do I do with the boys that you could actually start getting them started early, like go and do it as a family, as an activity. Like that's been a huge thing recently. Like how do I start, like instead of talking at them, which is what my parents did at me. I don't know about yours, but it's like, you should do this. I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying not to do that, always being told. So that's, I think everything starts younger. Mm-hmm. Like that's the main thing that I'm trying to do is like, how do we, you and I have experience, how do we put on classes where we teach them about like how to properly prepare? So you're going to, your passion now, and I think is a huge problem. How come, like, what is the issue with like probate estate planning? Can you just talk about that and how come that's a passion project for you?
Yeah, so I mean, the statistics are pretty grim.
Yeah, let's talk about the stats. 63%
of families in the country do not have any sort of planning in place. And it honestly doesn't matter what your income level is. The statistic goes across all socioeconomic income levels. I mean, we all saw when Chadwick Boseman died and he had a $40 million estate and no estate plan. I mean, that's a lot of money. So I would have loved for somebody to come to me with that kind of a estate and say, I really need some planning, some tax planning, some financial advice, and to figure out how I'm going to take care of my family, keep them out of court and keep them out of conflict. And that's what I want to do. So for the 63% of families that don't have any kind of estate planning, what happens is if they have any kind of assets, those assets are going to probably go through a court process called probate.
Yeah.
And in the state of California, probate means that the court is going to decide who your assets go to. And that is expensive. In California, we are 50 out of 50, number 50 in the most expensive probate and the probates that take the longest. So they say on average, a probate takes 18 months to get through court. You can expect to spend 5% of the value of the estate. So if you have $1 million estate or more, you can expect to spend $50,000 in court fees and attorney's fees. And that was math right off the top of my head. So I hope it was right. And 18 months. I mean, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to express to people that I meet is you certainly don't have to put a plan together with me, but talk to somebody, because what you don't want is your family to be grieving the loss of you, especially if it's a sudden loss, while they're trying to figure out how to keep your home and how to pay your bills and how to do any of the other things, distribute your life insurance proceeds, distribute your 401k. There's so many rules and so many regulations around all of that stuff that lawyers can barely keep up on it. We take classes. The rules are always changing. The IRS tax code is always changing. The federal tax exemption, it's very high now because of President Trump, but it's going to sunset and be very low in 2026, but we don't know what it's going to be. See a lawyer about that. This is the kind of things that I hear that are really nightmare stories are people that do an estate plan, but maybe they don't use an experienced attorney or an attorney, or God forbid, they use one of these ones online. Again, it's fine, but if your goal is to stay out of probate, I would at least talk to an attorney. There's so many good ones out there.
So what is the problem that's causing 63% of people? Like what is the main thing that continues to come up where just there's no value in it for people?
It's a great question. The people that I talk to, the number one thing that they always say to me is, I've been meaning to do this for so long and I haven't. And so what I think, it's not a problem, but I think the disconnect is that people think they have all the time in the world. And we all know, and this kind of goes back to when I was saying that COVID really changed this for me, is when I saw all of these people that were unexpectedly going into comas and having to be put on ventilators and being incapacitated and being unable to make decisions for themselves, I thought, I don't know if these people's families have a plan for them. And then when, God forbid, these people died and left their families alone, many of them were young, with young children, and they had no idea what was coming for them. None of us did. Did any of us know what COVID was going to do? And that was when I thought, I can be of better help to these people than I can to the clients that I'm serving now. And don't get me wrong, I've always appreciated every client I've ever had, but this was so important to me because we really dealt with life and death. So my number one thing is I think people think that they have more time than any of us is actually promised. And I do get a lot of people who are significantly older. I've had clients 91 and 94 who have put their estate plans together, but at least they have them now. But I've also had people call and say, I'm terminal and I need you to come and handle this for me right now. I don't think I'm going to live much longer. And at least those people have time. It's short time, but they have more time than somebody that's maybe in a car accident or something. Also, the other thing I would say is it's probably the fear. I don't think people are comfortable talking to lawyers, and I don't think people want to spend money talking to lawyers. And what I'm here to express to your audience and whoever will listen is that it doesn't have to be scary. The consult with me at least is free. I will at least talk to you and see if that I'm the right person to help you, or I'm a good fit for you or not. And then we talk about what the cost would be. And in my firm, the client picks the cost. So, and it's all done on a flat fee basis. So it doesn't have to be scary because the word no is always in your control.
How come so what exact adjustments did you make with regards to how you're running business than what the industry standard is? And how come you decided to give that value?
Yeah, so it's a great question. When I learned how to do estate planning, I joined a program of other lawyers, and we're personal family lawyers. It's a trademark. And what we have decided to do as a collective is to make it easier for people to not charge people an hourly rate so they don't feel like every second that they're on the phone with you, the clock is ticking or running away. If somebody calls me, that call is included in the price. If I go to their home and see them, rather than them coming to my office and seeing me, that is included in the price. So basically, we decided to make it as easy and as transparent for the client as possible. What we don't want is for the client to get a massive bill and have a bad experience. Personal family lawyers want their clients to feel like they can come back to them year after year if they need a change in their plan. And I offer that to all of my clients. Every 3 years, it's an automatic review. If you have grandkids that you want to add to your plan, or a spouse has passed, or you've sold or bought real estate, this is why real estate is, it's so near and dear to my heart because it's our biggest asset in California. And it's something that if anybody owns real estate here, they should have a plan for how it's going to pass. They don't. And so these are the types of things. I mean, those are just a couple examples of how we set up our model to be different from other lawyers. So, and it's not just, for me, it's heart and soul centered. I really want to know what's important to my clients.
Yeah.
I always ask them, what's the most important thing to you when we're doing your plan? Is it your assets? Is it taking care of your kids? Is it making sure that baseball card collection goes to the exact right person rather than to a thrift shop?
Yeah.
That it's those things. I want to know in their hearts what's important.
So, I mean, all joking aside, you see it in movies where families are battling after someone passes away about oh, this is mine. And that's, I mean, is that real life? Is that how messy?
Oh, yes.
You've seen it.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what kind of havoc are we talking about? Our families, can you share a story about how chaotic it could get? Because I think that's the one thing. It's not just about it's not just about your assets and what you own. Yeah. It's also about your wishes and desires. So I think if you could just dive in, because if six out of 10 people don't have a trust, then probably most people don't understand the value that it provides when we're all going to experience this is to come.
Yeah. So I don't have any personal experiences, but I can certainly point out to you one experience that we all may remember from the news. I don't know. Some people might be much younger, but do you remember that woman, Terry Schiavo, who was on life support after she went into a coma, and her parents and her husband were fighting what to do with her, whether to keep her on life support or whether to pull the plug. And I can't remember which one was for the life support, but she ended up being on life support for 20 years. And whichever the other one was, said she would never have wanted this. And that's the kind of thing that having a plan in place, a written plan, and in this particular case, it would be a advanced healthcare directive or a medical directive. You would be easily able to say in your plan, you are the person that's going to make this decision for me, and I don't want to live longer than 3 days on by artificial means. Done. Boom. You show it to the doctor. The doctor goes, look, here, it's a legal binding document. And the person who's in charge says, I know this is difficult for the rest of you, but this is what this person wanted, and don't we want to honor their wishes? So that's with regard to your person. I can tell you a personal story about myself. It certainly wasn't a high ticket item, but when my father passed, he was very sick. He had cancer, and we were estranged to an extent. But my brother and I wanted some of my father's artwork. He was a very, very good, prolific artist, and he used to keep his artwork in his place where he lived in Arizona. And we wanted to have some of that after he passed. And of course, my dad did not have a plan in place. And his girlfriend who lived with him at the time also wanted to keep it. And she thought she had an idea about what he wanted to do with it. And she lived with him, and that was probably very realistic. But we also thought maybe there's something way we can get a piece of art from him. And we ended up we didn't fight it out in court, but it was really a struggle to try to get us to come to the middle to figure out how we could each get a piece or a couple of pieces of my dad's artwork for ourselves, while she would be able to do with the collection what she wanted to do. Had my dad had wishes written out in writing, it would have been a lot easier. She would have been a lot more clear about what he wanted, and we would have been able to say, okay, it wasn't ours to have those pieces of artwork. It did end up working out, but it was a long time, and there were bad feelings involved. And we were grieving him. We were grieving his loss. So that's the kind of thing you want to avoid. You wanted people to just be able to grieve you. And we do things like we tell people, we have their instructions about their funerals written out, so if they have planned in advance to be buried somewhere or have a plot or a crypt or whatever, that can go in their plans. The plans are as detailed as the client wants them to be. We can do video remembrances so that you can do videos for your kids or grandkids that you've never met. I mean, there's so many things that we can do to make it as beautiful as possible. I mean, it's a hard topic for people to talk about their death. And a lot of people who think they have all the time in the world maybe haven't grappled with that.
I think it's the vulnerability, sitting here just, I didn't expect the conversation to go like this, but.
Sorry.
I actually meant that in a good way, because it really made me put myself in your family's shoes, and you're trying to remember your dad, you're trying to remember the good times, and what you're having to deal with is over material things,
right?
And had just the planning been done in advance, it just would have been a better experience for everyone. And, the honor, the wishes of that person are honored.
Right.
So it's, I'm thinking, I haven't really sat down to think, like, how come people don't want to address this? And you're basically saying you're dealing with mortality, and not a fun topic.
No, it
for
isn't.
anybody to talk about. So how do you, I think it's those consequences. Let's talk about the courts in California, the probate courts, because I heard some different things in regards to what happened with COVID. You said that during that period of time they were open. I also heard that, that they were very backed up. You said 18 months. So I can't imagine that at a state at this level that we rank 50th and that we're the highest cost.
Yeah.
We rank 50th, we take 18 months, and we're the highest cost.
Right.
Because none of those things add up.
It doesn't. First of all, we have the most amount of people, right, in the state of California. So that's why the courts are so backed up. Just the number of probates that are filed every day are vastly more than in a state like Maine, right, which is a small state. But also it's because of our rules, and it's because of our laws. It's because our courts are so strapped for cash. There just aren't more probate courts being built every day. So they're still handling the same or more amount of cases, while having had this temporary shutdown during COVID. Well, people were dying right and left. So the more and more and more cases were getting filed. They were doing the best that they could to deal with it during the time. But there were some mandatory shutdowns where they weren't allowed to do anything except emergency hearings. And then there's the coming out of that, where things have started to normalize a little bit.
Right.
But there's still a backlog, even in civil, which is the area of law that I practiced primarily before I changed to estate planning. Some courts are still coming out of that. We still have cases that were filed in 2019 or 2020 that haven't gone to trial, and we're in 2024. So the backlog is real. The cost is just the cost associated with doing, anything in the court in the state of California. It's expensive. You have attorney's fees, you have court costs, and then the length of time I kind of explained by the backlog in the probate courts and how long everything just takes.
Did that 5% of your estate include like attorney's fees and all that? Is that all? Okay.
Yeah. The whole
Crazy.
that's the estimated number is 5% of your estate is what it would cost you to get through probate. And that does include attorney's fees. Yes.
That's, I mean, they're getting a percentage of your estate. So if you have a $2 million estate, that's a
lot
nice
of money.
100.
Yeah. And that's for attorneys for both sides too. If you've got an estate, you've got the estate has an attorney, and then the person who's maybe challenging the estate. Or if there's no estate in probate, it might just be two lawyers hashing it out for two siblings or something like that. So it gets complicated, but.
So what is the right age for families to start looking at and exploring this process?
It's a great question. I have had young families with young kids because that's where you get into the guardianship and protection of your children in case something should happen to you. So I asked my young families in our first meeting, if you were to not come home from a date night, what would happen to your kids? And most people go,
is that the look you get?
Yeah, they would go to my sister or my brother, and then that's the wife, and then the husband will chime in, or my parents who live pretty close. And then I say, but what about the 13-year-old sitter that's sitting with them at the house? What's she going to do if you don't come home on a date night? Are the cops going to be knocking on the door going, hey, I'm so sorry, but mom and dad are, let's just say they're in the hospital. Not they were killed in a car accident, but let's just say they're in the hospital, right? Mom and dad are in the hospital. They're not going to be coming home tonight. What do we do with these kids? What is your 13-year-old babysitter going to do, right? She's going to call her parents. So we want to plan for that. We want to have paperwork at the house that says exactly what's going to happen with the kids in the event that something like that happens. And I'm sorry for your audience for putting it so drastically, but these are conversations that we have that parents often don't have. What happens if one of us doesn't come home or both of us don't come home?
Okay, Danielle, and I know this is not the happy, fun.
It's not. I'm sorry.
Conversation. I think what I'm taking away from you is like this is a huge problem in regards to like. The way I look at it in California, people have to work. Families that I serve have to work very, very hard to achieve the success that they have in life. Everything is expensive here. The costs continue to go up. Put in all this effort, all this work, and then to have your family have to deal with the nonsense, like it's already going to be hard enough when you lose a loved one. To have to deal with the mess that's going on. That just adds another layer of headache and anxiety and stress. And if you can avoid it by getting information out there, I think that's where I think the value comes in.
Absolutely.
And so let's jump into that. How is it that you're going to educate? You obviously are very passionate about this. You want to make a difference. You want to help families come up with solutions. How are you going to get this message out there? And what is the solution to get more people to take action?
Yeah. Education is the key to get people to take more action. And I'm doing what other lawyers are doing as well. I'm promoting myself on social media, my website, Facebook and Instagram. And obviously coming on your podcast has been huge. Thank you so much. But I am putting on presentations. So wine and wills, whiskey and wills, taps and trusts.
I like whiskey.
Yep.
We're a whiskey.
Yeah. I figure we're gonna get a lot of couples in there with the whiskey and wills. And these are educational seminars that have a set agenda where we talk about all of the things that we've basically touched on here, but we give people more statistics. We give people more tools. We explain to them, what exactly does a trust do? Do I need that? What exactly is a will? Is a will enough in the state of California? To your point, how old do I have to be to start thinking about this? Or how young can I be? Can you take care of me if I'm a single parent? How does my planning look different? What if we're a same-sex couple and we've adopted a child? Does our planning look different? So these are the kinds of questions that would be answered at my in-person seminars, but I'm also planning on doing some going live on social media type events. I've got some blog posts on my website, and I've got some video recordings that are going to be coming up on my website too. Just a one-liner like what is a will, where I'll answer that for you, and you can watch those different videos on my website. Those are coming soon.
Yeah. What's the one conversation you would have, you would suggest for most families to have when it comes to bringing up this topic? What should they discuss?
I think if you're a family with minor children, I think one of the most important things is that you need to get on the same page about who's going to take care of your children. And when I say take care of, obviously I do mean physically, but we also want to have people that are going to be taking care of your children that you both agree with their life philosophy, that you both agree there's enough money for you to leave to them to help raise your kids, right? So that they don't feel overburdened because they maybe have 4 or 5 children of their own. So you want to pick who the right family is going to be for your family if you're not there. And another thing that I tell my clients is a lot of people don't like this theory, but I want my clients to pick a deep bench of people. So not just with respect to guardians, but also with respect to who's going to make medical decisions for me. I want 2 or 3 people, and I don't necessarily want those people to be related, but if your family, if you pick your brother and sister to make decisions for you, and then you go on a vacation with your brother and sister and your plane goes down, we don't have a deep bench of people who's going to be making decisions for you. And it wouldn't necessarily be medical decisions, but it could be financial decisions, right? So I want people to think about who are the people that they trust the most in their lives. And it doesn't have to be somebody that you know and are close to. Like some people will pick their financial advisor to handle their financial things. That guy has no interest whatsoever in personally doing anything for you other than taking care of your business, right? So it doesn't have to be a family member. There's a lot of people out there that don't have family members that they're close to or trust. Could be a best friend, could be somebody from your church or your synagogue, anybody. But if we don't think about it, then we're not really starting to cement the idea in our minds that something could really happen to us.
And think about it, someone like a financial advisor is not emotionally connected during a very emotional time. And I was also thinking about, as you spoke, what's interesting is, wouldn't it be helpful to have a conversation with the person that you want to put in charge of your kids and
absolutely
finances? Absolutely. Holy smokes. I didn't even think about that aspect of it, because if you don't have that conversation, what if that person
doesn't know and something happens to you?
That would be very awkward.
Yes. I liken that kind of to telling somebody, I want you to be my kid's godmother or godfather, right? So you ask them very nicely, this is something I'm thinking about doing. Would you consider it in the unlikely event that something happens to me while my kid is still a minor? Because it is an unlikely event. It's not impossible, but it's not likely to happen.
Right.
But it could, and you want to have that person's agreement, because it could be your best friend and you could think my best friend's going to be the greatest parent in the world for my kids. And you talk to your best friend and they go, absolutely not. I've raised my kids. I have no interest. You want to know that, right?
Danielle, all I know is I've learned on my time in this planet, if you assume things about what other people want to do, man, are you going to be disappointed?
That's right. I agree.
I'm just saying.
I agree. So we have our estate plan done, right? And we have very different things in our estate plan. So we don't have any children to worry about. And even if we did, our children would be adults. But we have very different ideas about what we want to happen with our money. So that's just another example about something that you should talk to your partner or family member about. In that respect, it's a little bit easier if you're unmarried, because you get to decide where your money goes, and that is that. But if you have a partner, you may be shocked to find out your partner wants to give all their money to Church of Scientology, which no offense again, and you may not. So you're part of the community property in the state of California, where community property, if you're married, everything's 50-50 for the most part. That's my family law summation. You're part of the 50-50. You may not want to go to the Church of Scientology. So another reason to get it in writing, because you may be really adverse to something that your partner wants to do. And that's okay. Partners don't agree about everything.
That's not how partnerships work.
Yeah.
How comfortable is it for you? You talked about your marketing approach and how you're going to get the education out there, to help more families set their lives up for success when it comes to what's going to be inevitable. Is that a comfortable thing for you? How come you decided that, hey, I'm going to start getting on social media, start creating video content? How come you're going out of your comfort zone?
I think it's the way. I think it's the way that it has to be done now. I think to reach the broadest audience of people that I don't already know, I do have to stretch myself, and I don't necessarily have a problem stretching myself. I mean, I go to events by myself all the time. I go to networking events, and I've never met a stranger either. I'm just like you. So social media it's a tool, and it's a good tool. It's not the only tool. I still want to go out there and do the events because I think I'm best in person with people. And if you leave it to people to just read about it, I don't think they will. I think people want to be educated. They want to have their hands held. They want to feel heard. They want to feel seen even if it's their fear. And I feel like I'm good at talking people through that. So that's why I decided to go with social media. That being said, I'm horrible with social media. I can't do videos or reels. I post a picture with a caption, and I'm lucky if it's the right, it gets posted. So I did recently meet somebody, again, at a chamber meeting, who we have agreed to sort of help each other. She's referred me some clients. She's now doing my social media marketing for me. And we did a photo shoot and a rebrand and the whole thing. So I'm really excited about it because I'm not the same lawyer I was 23 years ago when I started this. I've got a lot of experience now.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I'm not the same lawyer that I was 23 years ago. Like, how are you in a better position to help make a difference today than you were 23 years ago? What's the biggest lesson that you've learned that you incorporated into how you solve families' problems?
I have always been a pretty aggressive lawyer, a pretty aggressive litigator. I have very zealous advocate for my clients. So if you read my reviews on Google, you'll see that everybody thinks that I'm the bulldog and I'm the fighter for them. And I am still all of those things. But that's worn me down a little bit over the years. I was telling you before we started filming that I felt like I was just going to die at my desk if I didn't make a change, because I would probably have a heart attack from the amount of stress. So in the way that I'm different is I feel like I've mellowed out a lot as I've gotten older, and I'm trying to have more patience than I did before. But again, it's a totally different area of law. There's nothing combative about it. There's nothing to argue with people about. People want what they want, and it's just my job to make sure that gets not just into a binder onto their shelf, but that it gets into their hearts and through to their families. Like that's really where it's at for me right now. I'm tired of the fighting.
Oh, it's going to make, it's the moment you'll be appreciated with the knowledge that you're going to put out there is the moment something, a change happens in life.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, thank goodness we were on top of that, and we don't have to deal with the headaches that other people do.
It's a very common reaction. You'll hear a lot of estate planning lawyers say this, but the peace of mind that people get when this is done, they didn't even realize how much it had been stressing them out, especially the ones that have been looking at the paperwork for years and have never done anything. Once they finally get it done, it's worth any amount of money that they spent to get it done, just to have that weight off their shoulders.
Yeah. And this is also, I think everything comes into our life at the moment that it's meant to. And this just put more of a urgency on my part to say, hey, there's more I can do. for the families that I serve, to let them know, hey, this is a really, really important thing. And when are you going to plan on doing this? Because it's very common when you help families, you see who has their home in a trust, and who's really is set up for success. Because the one thing that just doesn't make sense to me is like all these families work so hard to achieve life goals and be able to have home ownership and do all these things, accumulate all these assets, and then you don't put the simple thing in place to protect all of that and have your wishes respected. So I'm glad that we got a chance to speak, and you drop some knowledge, which is, hey, just get started, have the conversation. And I think that's the most uncomfortable part, is that mortality factor.
Yeah, and I want to just stress, as we're wrapping up talking about the estate planning really is for everybody. People contact me and they say, but I don't really have anything. And I say, okay, you may not have anything now, but you might have something down the road. There's no reason that you couldn't get started today with just a simple will. I'm sure if you don't have a home or you don't have a big asset, maybe you have something personal that you want to gift to somebody. There's a lot of people that still want to gift jewelry or musical instruments, sentimental things that came from grandparents and great grandparents. And also the power of attorney and the advanced healthcare directive, anybody can do those. And it's much more cost effective if you don't want to have a trust to just do a simple will with a power of attorney and a healthcare directive. Because if something happens to you, we all have that. We all have this shell that we're living in. And if something happens to that shell, you don't want doctors to be making decisions for you that you don't know, when it could be somebody that you know and trust making your final decisions. And it is not a socioeconomic thing. Everybody should have some sort of planning. And I really want to stress that to people.
And especially with the solution that you came up with, is what you're a part of. It's not hourly based.
Right.
It's a flat fee base, which I think is great, because I talk about fiduciary responsibility, and it's just such a more efficient way to take one of the barriers, out of the equation.
Absolutely.
So did you have fun?
I had fun.
I'm glad that you had fun. Danielle's going to have events coming up, and she's going to be talking about this. So we're definitely a huge fan. Look forward to having her back very, very soon. Appreciate all of you joining us, and we'll see you next time.